Okay. Okay. Julia, do you want me to continue or?
Yes, please.
Good?
You decide. You have the floor, and please introduce the webinar.
And shall I start?
Yes, of course, Carmen, please do.
And actually, yes, we didn't have, we couldn't have Libor's recording, but I think that more than an issue that he mentioned, we will mention this again. First of all, I want to say that I have this incredible emotion because it is a pleasure to start what not all of you know. This is the 6th webinar dedicated to the CercleS journal. So it has become a little bit throughout time and twice a year, like a tradition that started in 2021. And Anne and I are happy to say that the journal is doing, we can all say that the journal is doing well and flourishing a lot, especially in terms of what Libor underlined, diversity. Diversity from the cultural point of view, topics point of view, geographical perspectives as well. I also would like to say that it's been a special year for me because most of you know that there is this change of co-editor. I worked for 3 years with Gillian Mansfield. And as you can imagine, transition always gives a kind of anxiety. But I truly want to say thank you to Anne, because everything and the change, the move, the transition was so smooth. And although we knew each other already, but from different perspectives, and it was the first time to be co-editing, but it seemed like we had been working together for ages. And again, as Libor underlined, I want to say thank you to all the authors who accepted to be interviewees. But it was a very difficult selection for us because this webinar is dedicated to 2 numbers, 14.2 that was published in 2024 and 15.1 published last May. And obviously we can select no more than 2 per issue. But we really thought a lot. I can see that there is also Luisa Bavieri here. We also have a very interesting activity report that she published with another colleague and talks about language centers in the Bologna area in Italy. So it was hard, but then at one point we had to decide, and we're happy to welcome all the authors, and in particular the 4 interviewers who I really hope they will enjoy this experience. Then on a different perspective, my final remark is about the journal and the work that we do at the journal. I think it's important to say that it's absolutely teamwork. And it's not the first time, but every time I do want to mention Dominique Kruger. She's journal coordinator. And, without her support, we would have had so many technical issues for sure. So she's always next to us when solving problems, when giving suggestions to authors. So she's here. I want to say thank you to her. And then we also have to, today, I think this is important for all of you to know that even Sana, maybe you can help me with your last name, San Lorix.
Yeah, that's right. Sana Laurix, yes.
Laurix. Just arrived, and welcome, journal managers. Now, LLHE is a journal to which so many language professionals refer. and diversity because these papers come from all over the world. So we can say, and I want to underline this, the CercleS is so greatly involved into this action of spreading research of so many authors, so many professionals who work in different areas. As co-editor and together with Anne as co-editors, we're happy that we can give CercleS, how can I say, this research-oriented, integrated with teaching-oriented support. We do it by selecting carefully all the papers, incredible number of papers that we receive, and we hope that we can always select those who that can be inspiring for the LLHE readership. Anne, it goes to you.
Yeah, thank you, Carmen. I don't want to say too much. Thank you for the kind words you said about me. It's true that it was a challenge for me because this was something I had never done before, but I was glad that I was working with you because, of course, you've been at the head of the journal for quite a number of years now, and you really working hard, and I can tell everybody that it's really hard work behind the paper, but we managed to exchange quite regularly, almost well, I don't know how many mails every day, but it's true that we exchange a lot and always have a lot to do. Just to give you an idea of the numbers of articles we receive, I think that since January we've received 52 new papers approximately. Of course, not all of them are excellent, and we need to read them, select them carefully, decide on the ones that we want to send to reviewers or not, and so on. But there are many very good papers, and they do represent an interesting diversity about language centers and the different areas that people in the language centers research in, and this is really interesting. Now I think it's time. Yes, it's exactly 4:15, so I think it's time for our authors to start. So I think the first ones are Mark, Irmgard, Sabina, and they are interviewed by Simon, whom oh yes, I can see him now. Yeah.
Okay. So thanks to everyone for inviting me to interview here, and thanks to Irmgard and Mark for agreeing to be interviewed. Maybe we can just start with a general question. Could you just tell us a bit about what you did and what you found?
Sure. Irmgard, shall I kick off on that one? Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be interviewed about this. I've been an interviewer before, and I think this exercise is great, and it's good to see so many friendly faces and names I know so well. Sabina unfortunately can't be with us today because she's traveling, so Irmgard and I are going to do a bit of a double act. But basically, this paper originates out of a conversation I had with Sabina when she was previous president of CERC, and I was in charge or convening the focus group on management and leadership, where we wanted to explore how, as CERC, as a network, how we might be able to better use the premise of research as a means of improving or enhancing quality and innovation across the teaching that we all do in our centres. Now, there has been, as we detail in the paper, and I'm not going to go through the paper because in detail because you can all read it yourselves, but as we mentioned in the paper, there has been some individual research done on this matter over many years. In particular, FINELC and AKS did some research back in the 2010s, but we'd never had the international overlay, so we decided to do a survey to understand, well, first of all, what sort of activities were going on, what the opportunities and barriers to research and how we link that into teaching were, and also what other activities were being undertaken within language centres to allow our colleagues, ourselves, to become more familiar with the research that was being done. So we started off with a premise and an assumption that the quality of the work we do in teaching languages to our students is enhanced by a research-led approach. And we had various other hypotheses that we wanted to test, or things we wanted to explore, might be a better way of looking at it. They're detailed in the paper, but just to summarize briefly, what was the scale of research activity that there is going on around the CercleS network? And is there any relationship between the scale of the research activity and the size of the language centre? Is there any connection between research activity and staff training and development, particularly around continuing professional development? Is there any link between the conduct of the research and the active learning that is being done in language centres from that research? What are the barriers to the research that we're undertaking? Or what are the barriers that maybe prevent individuals or language centres undertaking research in the first place? What are the attitudes to research in relation to the remit of the language centres? So in other words, many of us are or have been managers in language centres, and how does that influence the way we approach research strategically within language centres? Are there any differences between national associations? And finally, how might we, as a result of all of this, sort of encourage the spread of research culture, learn from each other in respect of what we do? So all of these conversations took place early in 2023. Irmgard then very kindly came on board and joined us to help us with the conduct of the survey. And we launched the survey in October 23 and left it open until late in November. So it's about 5 weeks or thereabouts it was open. And the survey was disseminated around all of the members of CercleS. So that at the time was 401 members. I'm not sure exactly what the numbers are right now. And we received 99 responses. Now, of those 99 responses, about 75% of them, I think it was 74 of 99, so call it what you will, were from 5 national associations. So particularly AULC in the UK and Ireland and ACS in Germany had significant numbers of respondees. 1 or 2 other national associations, less so. I won't name those. It's fairly obvious if you look at the paper who those might be. But there's also an interesting angle as to understanding why some people replied and why some people didn't. Now, when we looked at the results, we decided 99 out of 400, about 25% of the membership, was a good representative sample, and therefore the results we've got are statistically valid. But we have to then try and not make too many assumptions about the 75% who didn't reply. It could be either they're not doing research, they're quite small, or they didn't have the time. So there's a certain grey area within that. In terms of the findings, we believe, it's our opinion, that we sort of confirmed our hypothesis, or our assumption might be a better phrase, that the quality of the teaching that we do is enhanced by the research, either the research that we ourselves individually might be doing, or the research that is being done by others and is therefore being shared. Obviously we have different ways of sharing that research, the LLHE journal being one, the conference being another, etc., etc. But there were some interesting features within there. So, for example, there doesn't appear to be any particular correlation to the size of the language centre and the volume of research that's being done. So there is some very high quality research being done clearly in quite small centres, and some other quite large centres who are maybe not doing any research at all. And that comment doesn't reflect positively or negatively, and shouldn't be construed one way or the other in terms of language centres, because there are so many obstacles in our way to be able to do that research. It's also interesting that of the centres that replied, a significant proportion are involved actively in conducting research. But there's a difference between a language centre itself conducting research and individuals within that language centre conducting research, in that many of the individuals are doing it of their own interest because they have the time, maybe they've got it in their contracts. But there's not necessarily always a link between a priority from the language centre and the interests of the individual. So the research that's being done does tend to be curiosity driven, particularly individual, but often the the needs of the centre and the interests of the individual do align. And we did find that as the most significant response. But when you look at when we try and look at the numbers of individuals doing research, it is quite low across the number of respondees. It's probably only around 10% of individuals who are working in language centres are actually doing research for all sorts of reasons. But the most interesting thing is that the people who are doing the research whether their contracts allow it or not. So there was quite a disparity. So, for example, in the UK, where research usually is referred to as scholarship, around 50% of the respondees have their staff who are expected to do research in their contracts. If you go to some of the other countries around Europe, no staff have time or allocation in their contracts, or an expectation in their contract, shall we say, to do research, but they still are actively doing so. So it's quite encouraging in that respect, in terms of how individuals perceive their professional role in that sense. The other interesting thing was we looked at the research itself. Twice as many language centres are involved in research as have staff contracts who involve research. And this is one of the most interesting facets I think our survey found, is that the number of staff who are contractually required or expected to do research is quite low. And that is quite a big obstacle. The other obstacles to doing research are obviously time. So if you are doing research, but your contract doesn't expect you to do, and therefore you've got a high teaching load, you actually have the time to do very much research. And that's where it's interesting to point out the fact that just because one person is doing research and another one is not, that doesn't necessarily reflect on those individuals. And a significant number of staff even on casual contracts are also engaged in research, but how they're able to do that is moot, shall we say. We then looked also, beyond doing the research itself, about the research culture, so to speak. So how people can access research, even if they're not necessarily doing it themselves, or how someone may be able to access research in one area when they're researching in another. And a significant number, I think it was of the 27 language centres who responded, who are not involved in doing research themselves or don't have staff doing research themselves, they are still making access to research prominent within their centres, be this through research talks, through seminars, through forums, through publication archives, or whatever it might be. So just to summarise, we've not measured the volume of research that's being undertaken, and we haven't commented or looked at or been able to reflect on the quality of the research that's being undertaken, but we have been able to establish that a significant proportion of the language centres who responded to the survey are either actively engaging in research themselves or are actively developing a research culture within their institutions. And there's clearly evidence of a positive attitude towards research within our language centres, which is a good thing. And so when we therefore feel that our initial assumption about the link between research, quality enhancement and innovation is valid. It could be challenged, of course, and has been, but we'll see how that goes. There's no striking difference between national associations. So the levels of research, the types of research are broadly similar, particularly across the 5 national associations who submitted most responses. There's no particular correlation between size of language centre and scale of activity. And a large number of language centres have positively said they see research orientation as part of their professional role. And this is fundamentally where the original conversation I had with Sabina came, is that we see language centres as a base from which research in language teaching should be done, and something that we should take ownership of. So I guess the next steps are to see how we take the findings of the survey into maybe disseminating the culture more broadly across CERC. Sorry, that's probably rather long-winded, Simon.
That's great. No, that's fine. But maybe I can pick up where you finished, actually. So what ideas do you have? I think the paper mentions a SIG within CercleS that could be used to help enhance research.
Yes, shall I take over, Mark? Yes, this is something that we thought could be useful. We also proposed something like, on the basis of what we found out, guidelines might be developed in order to help language centers how to establish a research-friendly culture in a language center, maybe despite adverse conditions, or how to use best the conditions that we encounter ourselves. And we know we are so vastly different, all of us, that, you know, that would be quite an interesting task, obviously, and a lot of people would need to feed into that in order to make it something that is actually useful. We also thought that it might maybe encourage people to explore routes into how, especially because of the constraints they find themselves in terms of their contracts, how they can still explore ways to find ways at least to sort of engage with research, if that's what they're interested in. For example, how to discover projects. I think projects are very often a first way of you know, finding maybe a teaching and learning project, but then you have the condition that you need to evaluate it, that you need to publish a paper on it, or so at least that's in what happens in our context. That, and obviously with the evaluation, with the publishing, you need to ask the methodological basis for this and so on, and this is also where you could then engage with colleagues. So yes, I think that's, you know, that's just some ideas
Right.
that we could think. Yeah.
How much training do you think staff could benefit from if they want to embark on research, or how much training do you think they might need?
Again, I think that is extremely individual. I mean, some of the people who are here, who are esteemed researchers, you know, they've published vastly in reputed journals and are invited to conferences and so on. So, you know, they know very well, and they probably don't need any other training. However, I mean, everybody who works in a language center, at least in my context, you know, you have to have at least an MA. Many have PhDs, so they have proved that they have an academic background. In language centers, it's not always, especially a language teaching background. You know, we have many areas that people come into, especially if they teach subject specific language, or ESP and so on. However, they've proven that they can actually, you know, that they have some, or maybe some a very good basis for you know, a systematic inquiry into a certain area that they want to know more about. Let's put it crudely. Maybe just an example at the top of my head that came when we were in a Bremen conference a few years ago, and there were workshops, like pre-conference workshops for sort of first-time researchers to deal with, I mean, the typical like qualitative one on qualitative and quantitative methods, you know, in sort of social sciences, but also many of those feed into language teaching, obviously, you know, qualitative research. I mean, we derive our methodologies from ethnography, from linguistic inquiry, from, you know, whatever, you name it. So these could be ways to explore, for example, within a CercleS conference, just as an idea, somebody who feels they are, or we could, you know, find experts who have proven that they know their area. They could offer maybe a pre-conference workshop or a session within CercleS where people either an introduction to certain research methods, or a pre-conference workshop for people to explore certain themes, you know, like the SIGs who deal on we have one at the university for social researchers to deal with quantitative methods.
Okay, thank you. And what about the staff's reaction to the idea that research should be enhanced? Do you feel that maybe staff might object to a sense that they should be expected to do research, some kind of an unwritten maybe sense that they're being encouraged to do research?
I'll start, and then maybe Mark can also answer that. in my language center, and I've worked in a few different ones, there were always people that were extremely, first of all, some of them were always active in research, never mind their contracts. The second one is that there are people who are very, very keen on doing research. Now, where I work, people teach 24 hours a week. And that is, that is hardly, that's basically the schools, and so I don't know how they find the time to do that. So they would welcome the opportunity to being encouraged, or they love being encouraged. They love being told, yes, you can go to conferences. Yes, we would love to have your contribution in a staff development workshop. Tell us about your research. And they did that. I mean, this is what we do, but obviously there's a massive time constraint. Other people are, shall we say, sometimes averse to research, and not because they deny the knowledge that we derive from research, because this is obviously the main point. We want to know more about what we do. What do we do with our classes? What do we do with the assessment that we do? But because maybe they've come such a long way being language teachers, and obviously working very hard, that they feel they are no longer connected to that, although they all have this, as I said, an academic background, at least an MA and so on. So yeah, diverse picture. Mark, shall I?
Absolutely.
Do you want to add in?
Just briefly, I mean, the survey itself we did looked first at the conduct of research, but also the dissemination and the receipt of research and the learning that we can get from that research. And of course, not everybody is going to be doing research, and there's no expectation that everybody will do research. There is a facet, there could be too much research, and that will just drive the quality down potentially. So what we want to do is to make it as easy as possible for those who do want to do research to do so. And there are certain things that are within our control and certain things that aren't. But also those who are doing research and are publishing in the journal or going to conferences, we of course want them to have an audience who receive their research and learn from it very well, so that the research can have a better impact. So if I go back, I take an early retirement now, so I'm talking to you on holiday, permanent holiday at the moment. But if I go back to my old language centre, we were always encouraging colleagues to read up, find out what's the latest information, what's the latest developments in AI or whatever it might be. And therefore, the challenge is perhaps one of allowing those who want to do research to do so more easily, but also to get those others who are not doing research to engage with the research that is being done more completely. And how we do that's where the research culture comes in. And I guess a lot of it is a communication issue, and using networks like CercleS to be able to allow us to do that more easily is a clear advantage.
Right, thank you. Okay, so I hand now back to Carmen, I think. Thank you very much, Mark. Thank you very much, Irmgard.
Let me put the audio on. Thank you, Simon, for your interesting questions, and Mark and Irmgard. You highlighted an important issue. Research is such an important, perspective that we have to consider. And every time I always, I think it was back to 2021, there was this, in LLHE, this article published by David Little, where he mentioned that the future of language centers, European language centers, is a future with research-oriented, also a research-oriented perspective. So thanks a lot for this input. And now we're giving the floor to Hanna Kosonen and Jean Inivara. Anna, actually, we're moving to another context of language centers in Finland. So the floor goes to you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, and greetings from Helsinki. Plus 18 degrees, partially cloudy, so welcome if you want to cool down. My name is Janne Niinivaara. I work as the Chief Specialist of Education in the University of Helsinki Language Center, and I'm interviewing my colleague Hanna Kosonen. Hanna, please introduce yourself briefly.
Hello, everybody. It's an honor to be here. I'm a written communication teacher in Language Center and L1 Finnish. And I'm also a doctoral student in a program of languages in Helsinki University. And the topic of my doctoral dissertation deals with language centers also. So we will continue with that with Janne soon.
Yes. Before diving into your research and to your article deeper, just a brief glimpse to the Finnish language center system, if you may, because in the Finnish universities and in tertiary education in general, it is compulsory for the students to complete a certain amount of language and communication studies in their degree, regardless of the field of the studies. For example, in the university, it might vary a bit based on the university, but the main idea is that you need to take those studies in your mother tongue, which is in Finland, can be Swedish or Finnish, and the second national language, which is the other, depending on your first language, and then foreign language, which is most generally it's English, but also a wide range of other languages are possible. And on top of that, naturally, language centers offer a broad selection of optional language courses. For example, in the University of Helsinki Language Center, 14 languages are available for students to take. However, in Finland also, especially at lower levels of education, the language reserve has been noted to decline a bit. So fewer students are choosing to study optional foreign languages. This is happening at the same time while the linguistic diversity in the population is increasing. For example, in the larger cities, there are greater variety in the languages spoken as a first language than, let's say, 20 years ago. So it's, let's say, interesting scope for language centers to deal with. And in this context, Hanna, you are doing your doctoral research. And let's start with that. You could tell us a bit more specifically, what are you researching and why you initially got inspired by your theme of research?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. The article we're discussing today is actually a first sub-study of my doctoral research, and it's based on a nationwide survey conducted among staff members of all Finnish university language centers. We have 14 universities in Finland. So in the article, I look at how language center professionals describe and justify their work community's language practices. And as a method, I used a mixed method approach. I analyzed statistical correlations between different questionnaire items and complemented that with an inductive qualitative content analysis on the open-ended responses. And this very article is a part of a larger project, and the broader research is grounded in participatory action research. So in addition to the survey, my data includes workshop recording among language center staff in a focus group and participatory observation. And across the project, I'm interested in how language experts reflect on their own language use in workplace interactions. And more broadly, how such practice shape what I call
We're going through some technical difficulties. Hanna is.
Yes,
Yes,
it's
there you are.
coming
Okay,
back.
please, yeah. No, it's okay.
Yeah.
Please continue.
Yeah. So more broadly, I'm interested in what I call linguistic space. And I've been inspired by scholars like Suresh Ganagarcha and human geographer Doran Massey, who see space as something relational, layered, and dynamic. So this idea also forms the basis of the STAR model I've developed in the research. But we will come to that back a bit later. And as for motivation, well, initially I was more focused on how students experience language, space, and inclusion in the language center context. But gradually I began to turn the lens inward. I started to notice certain moments in staff meetings and everyday encounters where there was a little tension and confusion in language choices, often between English, Swedish, and Finnish. And all this triggered a deeper reflection. How can we model inclusive and linguistically aware practices for students if we don't reflect on them within our own community? And what does it mean really for language professionals to inhabit multilingual spaces? Because their language isn't only a tool for work, but also an object of the work and a core part of a professional eye. So I realized there was a gap in research because while language policy, language teaching, and language learning have been widely studied in higher education, the everyday multilingual practices of language experts themselves had received little attention. And yet, how multilingualism is understood and enacted within these expert communities may shape the kind of multilingualism that universities ultimately support and promote more broadly, I think.
Yeah, thank you. And in your article, Language Practices in the Work Communities of Finnish Language Centers, you report your first sub-study of this matter. How would you summarize your key findings that you reported in the very article?
Well, one of the key findings from the statistical analysis had to do with what factors correlated with overall satisfaction regarding workplace language practices. And there I found that, okay, clarity of language practices is important, but it's not enough. What correlated even more strongly with satisfaction?
Again, I think we need to wait for a moment. Okay, there you go.
Coming back, no problem. So what correlated even more with satisfaction wasn't the clarity, but the visibility of multilingualism in the workplace and the freedom to use one's preferred language. So it's not just about rules, it's also about agency, inclusion, and everyday recognition of the whole linguistic repertoire of the community. And to better understand these dynamics, I developed a star-shaped model. I found 6 motifs that describe the motives behind the language choices. And the 6 motives in this model were identified through indirect.
Let's hope that she will get back.
I think
Yes,
she's
I'm
dealing
coming
with
back.
with
Maybe
two.
I will shut down the video. It might work better without.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I-
Let's try.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have this model, the star shape model. And now, Janne, could you please show the image that helps to illustrate the idea?
Yeah, I contacted before. I cannot share it from here, but I think it's possibility to.
Yeah.
I can give you, yes, Janne, I can give you, I can
Okay.
make co-host, which I just did, and you can share it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And here we go.
Can you see it now?
Okay, fine.
Yeah, okay, here, yeah. Okay, and now you can see two stars, and on the left you see a more informal setting, a coffee room conversation, and on the right a formal meeting. And each space brings forward different expectations and different motives become more or less visible depending on the situation. So the idea is that even within the same workplace, multiple linguistic spaces can emerge with different motives emphasized. And the aim of this model wasn't just to describe the most dominant patterns, but also to collectively make room for those motives that participant felt important, yet often remained overlooked and underrepresented in practice. But while the image is now up, let me briefly walk you through the 6 motives I've found. So there is this time-benefit ratio. People weigh the effort of using a particular language against what they gain from it, often in terms of efficiency or workload. And the second is national languages. There were concerns about the declining use of Finnish and Swedish, especially when English becomes the default without discussion. And third, communication certainty and emotions. So how confident or exposed people feel in different languages. Many describe this also as an embodied experience. So fourth, accessibility and inclusion. Language as access to information, to networks, to belonging, but also something that can exclude people. Fifth, lingua franca, striving for mutual understanding through a shared language, usually English, but there is also the awareness that of the assumptions and limits that comes with this assumption of lingua franca. And finally, multilingualism itself, so the wish to keep space open for a broader set of languages, not just the officially recognized ones. So in the picture, you can say 2 workplace scenarios. On the left, you can see that in a coffee room, communication, certainty, and emotions are forward, as well as multilingualism and accessibility and inclusion. But the time-benefit ratio is not that prominent. In an official meeting, time-benefit ratio might be quite important, as well as lingua franca and accessibility and inclusion. So we can see that in the same workplace, different motives are in a different forms, and that might help us to understand what happens in a specific situation. So this model helps us not only to understand the language choices, but also see what matters to people and what may still be missing from the way we structure our communicative spaces. Okay.
Hanna? Okay.
Okay, Hanna, are you still with us?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes,
good.
I'm here. Yeah.
Yes, good. Perfect. Thank you. And then one more question before the last question. I have two left, and we still have time, a couple of more minutes. And the last question will be like more practical one. But the last question about the very research at hand. You mentioned that since you are doing your PhD at the moment, and the research has progressed even beyond this data analysis. So, what are the big questions in your mind now? Like, what are you focusing on next? What will happen next?
Yes. One of the questions stems from the fact that I'm not studying just any workplace, but a community of language professionals. So people whose very job is to work with language and communication. And this brings with it a meta-level section related to linguistic expertise. On one hand, such expertise provides the ability to perceive and conceptualize linguistic phenomena. On the other hand, it fosters sensitivity to the nuance of interactions and creates expectation for exemplary communication. And this can lead to situation where expertise doesn't shield one from uncertainty, but may even increase pressure, as everyday situations are often contradictory, ambiguous, and often open to multiple interpretations. So the motive of multilingualism likely takes on a different meaning in a language expert community where language is the core of the work. Visibility of different languages can signal professional recognition, but the data also show that some teachers don't want to speak their teaching language in every situation or be seen as its constant representative. And the second set of questions concerns the structural and institutional conditions for multilingualism. Because despite strong discourses around multilingual universities and workplaces, language education throughout the school system, starting from primary education, is still largely organized in silos. Languages are taught as separate subjects, often in separate classrooms and by separate teachers. And this materially and socially segregated model tends to persist, at least to some extent, also in higher education. So this reveals a broader paradox. Global multilingualism is expanding. People cross borders, blend languages, and use diverse semiotic resources, but institutional language education has, with a few exceptions, not kept pace with these multilingual realities. And in my data, language professionals are aware of this contradiction. They are familiar with concepts such as translanguaging and parallel multilingualism, yet they feel they can not actively model or implement such approaches in their work, not always. But that said, there are some promising examples. For example, at the University of Jyväskylä, the language center MOVI has actively begun to address these challenges in both practice and research. There is recent publications offer quite valuable insight into how institutions might move toward more integrated multilingual approaches. What do you think, Janne? Do we have time for third or
if you could with one sentence you could say this
yeah.
the practical advice for the work communities who want to improve its linguistic resources and multilingual practices, the okay. One top one tip.
Top one, okay. What I would say, and this comes also from my method, I have this participatory action research method in the whole research project, is that expertise is not external. In my project, it's built collectively through discussion, listening, and negotiation. And what I would say is that there are tensions, but we have to confront these tensions rather than resolving them, because tensions can be a productive starting point, especially when surfaced and discussed together. So it's essential to discuss these things among our own work communities too, so that we can model good practices to students and to the university community in general.
Thank you, Hanna, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you to all, to the two of you for reminding us the importance of multilingualism. Yes, the final tip was important, Jan. So it was good that Hanna told us about that. And now we're moving from Finland to Poland, and I want to welcome Marta. And here, I'm afraid, Strukowska. I hope
that is right. That is right.
Okay.
Great.
Together with Liliana Schulze-Dornar, friend. Ciao, Liliana.
Hello.
Nice to see you, although on the screen. This article will be, we were actually attracted, Anne and I were attracted because it spoke about a project-based learning. And this is happening at the Language Center of Poznan University of Technology. So it's about leadership strategies. The floor goes to you.
Yes, thank you, Carmen. Hello, everybody. It's nice to see a lot of you. Unfortunately, online, we would prefer with Marta to talk on a site maybe next time during conference, we will see. To keep our timing, a very short introduction. I would like to introduce, first of all, Marta Strukowska, who is a colleague of mine working at the Center of Languages and Communication at Poznan University of Technology, Technical Engineering University. My wall today is not only logo of university, but also acronym of UNIS. This is Alliance Partnership with 10 universities. We, as Poznan University of Technology, we are leaders, but we do a lot of cooperation, a lot of projects, not only with language centers, because at some universities we don't have language centers. We have only smaller institutes. Sometimes teachers of languages are part of faculties. But it is interesting to see how it goes also with the topic of PBL, project-based learning, through UNIS. So I would like to ask, first of all, Marta to have a kind of short introduction of her research and activities at our language center. Marta.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. I would like to first of all thank you, Professor Liliana Sztuka-Dorna, for this short intro and for the organizers for this fantastic illuminating session on research. This is a great opportunity for all of us who are motivated to do it, and you are highly encouraged through your talks. So when it comes to my research, my interest research, it centers around anthropological linguistics, because this is the area of study that I did research on during my PhD studies. I gained my PhD from the University of Wrocław. And the interests center around anthropological linguistics, pragmatic linguistic, ethnography of communication. So they are extremely connected, or they are like at the intersection of discourse, culture, communication, and language. So it's quite a vast area. And I've always been interested in how power differentials are distributed and strengthened within different types of organizations, including academia academia and students' life, and how actually language shapes leadership patterns, leadership strategies. And that is why I came up with this idea of shared leadership among students. And it all started actually with my PhD idea to do research on Donald Trump's discursive practices, and I highly recommend my book at this point, Tracking Trump, an anthropolinguistic study of discourse, practice and political persona. I highly recommend it for both proponents and opponents, but this is a great reading when you want to have an overview of leadership in crisis.
Okay, thank you, Marta.
So
I'm going to keep timing, but also I'd like to say that you finished the book when Donald Trump wasn't president. Okay, so I don't know whether it's thanks to your research or what happened, but well, it could be interesting. All right, for the purpose of the article and for our today's short introduction to your article, I think it will be important for us, for our listeners, to explain two key words. One is the shared leadership. So I would like you to give a short definition or short explanation how to understand. And the second is project-based learning.
Okay, so shared leadership, it's like an umbrella term. We would talk about shared leadership as a collectivistic leadership, as a leadership in the plural, and obviously it's based on the collectivity. In this case, in the case of students' culture, I was looking at the collective potential of the group, and what I was looking at and what makes shared leadership the center point are the relations, the power relations. So students rely on horizontal relations within groups rather than the vertical ones, which hinge on hierarchical or superior-inferior role. And the model of shared leadership that I adopted in the study has two crucial aspects. So the first of all that I've mentioned is this collectivity. So it's a social project-based learning is a social process of collective activity that transforms power relations within students' groups. And it is done through language, through their language codes. It obviously helps with managing and distributing information to solve problems. So first of all, they do it together. And the second, let's say, building block of shared leadership within PBL would be the aspect of creativity, because the creativity in PBL holds the principles of creative thinking, of design thinking, and also promotes diverse learning skills, improves transverse skills. So in this way, we can say that leadership, shared leadership, takes place through collective action. This is the first thing. It boosts creativity through group processes and teamwork. And also in this way, we can say that PBL is a group phenomenon. This is what I was focusing on when I was writing this article. It's like a group collective effort.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. My next question goes to a little bit pragmatic way of my living at university. After reading your article, what can I take for granted to Language Center? What can I implement as individual teacher? What can be beneficial for my partners from unis? And generally, what research, what type of research, which you've done, we may find also in our language centers?
Okay, so project-based learning is one of the teaching methods. One of the teaching methods that has been adopted, for example, by the Center of Innovative Education at PUT. This is the unit that also includes two more elements, crucial elements, like Innovative Education Lab and English medium instruction, with Professor Liliana Sztukadorna being the coordinator. So the Center of Innovative Education is it's like a hub. It's like the center of methodological and didactic support that serves all the departments. And this is what is innovative about the center, because it offers not only training methods like PBL, but also case teaching, flipped blended learning, edutainment, design thinking. So it's crucially focused on the, let's say, engineering work, but also remember that we are partners of UNIS, right? So we participate in various types of courses, various types of workshops that they suggest, that they offer. And for example, the recent one of the UNIS projects called Problem-Based Learning, Running an Import-Export Project for a Company, serves a great example why it's so applicable. It's pragmatic in terms of applicability, usability. And these areas crucially focus on real life problems that students are working on. So I would say that PBL is strictly connected with the nature of engineering work, such as logical thinking, thinking according to processes and systems, orientation to detail. So it is transformative for students in a sense that they become innovators, collaborators. They are no longer passive recipients, givers and takers, but they are co-designers, they are collaborators, they think out of the box. So everything is driven by creativity. So we find a lot of assets to this method.
Okay. In your research, there is a sentence, it's my quote I have here, that 68% of students claimed that there was no singular leader within their groups when delegating tasks. Okay, so the question is, how would you interpret this outcome in relation to PBL? What can be done so they are more confident? I don't know, shall we focus more on key competencies introduced by European Union? Where shall we go?
So first of all, it proves that PBL is an effective method in fostering shared leadership dynamics. This is one thing. And students also have noticed that they share some common ground, that they are working on topics, they build the knowledge on the topic, and during the problem-solving tasks, they come up with real tangible solutions. So they feel empowered in a way. So they've got this sense of agency, also confidence. And as you know, the study or the empowerment issue is inextricably linked with leadership in general. So those students who are empowered, they are better at self-organizing, they distribute responsibilities between each other in a better way. And one more thing that is crucial in relation to why they claim there was no singular leader is that, for example, 53% of students express full autonomy in their task, while 47% acknowledged full dependence on others. So this seemingly equal split could prove that it's a well-balanced dynamics, that the students contribute at different stages of the project implementation in a non-hierarchical manner. They know when to step back maybe and become a part of the group, and when to self-monitor, self-control maybe. So this is another thing. And maybe one last thing, why there is no singular leader, why they thought so, that they have created the community of practice, POP, the community of practice. So people who gather together, they feel the sense of belongingness, maybe the sense of being a part of something, of joint activity, that they want to achieve something important. So leadership here is co-constructed. It's distributed across the team, and paradoxically, it creates a comfort zone for them because they feel needed, right? They feel they share the knowledge in a quite natural way. So it's like breaking barriers at the same time.
I think our last question would be, and point of discussion, that in your studies there is the digital shift, the issue of digital shift, which is imperative for PUT students. So my question would be, how would the integration of digital technologies improve shared leadership? Do you find light at the end of the road, or there is still a dispute?
Obviously, this is integration of digital tools, and developing digital competences is part and parcel of every project work, because this is the place where we live. Yes, the working process, the learning process is constantly aligned with digital technologies. But I think this also it can boost their intrinsic motivation, which proved to be significant in the study, because students pointed to the fact that intrinsic motivation boosts their creativity, autonomy, but also resistance to external rewards. So they are more creative, yes, on their own. They are driven by their own initiatives. So I think that maybe giving the students the tools, the ideas of where to look for credible sources on the internet, or different types of software, would be a good idea on the part of the teacher, who is a facilitator and a coach at this point. I'm talking about these higher level groups.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Of course, we have to remind everybody that these are engineers, okay, so engineers to be. So a question about digital technology is sometimes a rhetorical question, but I think it's good to know. And final comment, Marta. You did research, you sent an interesting article to CercleS journal. What next? How do you look at your students when you come to the classroom, and do you think they follow your research statistics, or they change, or you are going to change a little bit as a teacher?
So I'm the person who is in favor of a participant observer method. So I rather observe, give advice, but also motivate. If I can see some sparks of an initiative on the part of the students, I would like to encourage them, give them the green light, because I'm in favor of thinking out of the box and not sticking to clear-cut divisions. So and students obviously know that I do research on them. So so there's nothing new about that.
Good. All right. So thank you, Marta. Thank you, everyone. I think we are keeping the time. So Carmen, the floor is yours again.
Yes. Well, sorry, I will take the floor for once.
Anna, okay.
No problem.
Anna, just one comment, if you don't mind. Just one comment, perfectly on time. I just wanted to make comments on Liliana and Marta. Thank you for really sharing so many key concepts about project-based learning, effective method, problem solving, tasks, full autonomy, creativity, self-monitoring, and also this final important aspect of digital tip. Thank you. And Anne, yes, the floor goes to you, because now we're moving to Switzerland with another.
I don't live in Switzerland, but anyway.
No, but we're moving because Sara lives there.
You mean we're moving to French-speaking people? But anyway, they're going to talk in English.
Absolutely.
So no problem. The last interview will be the interview about the article by Sara, Cotelli, Kureth, Elisabeth, Paliot, and Suzana, Zink. Their article is about an action research project at 2 Swiss universities, and they evaluated different aspects of the inclusion of AI tools in students' written tasks, and they're going to be interviewed by my ex-colleague, Seto Yibuku from the University of Lorraine in France. The floor is yours, Sara and Seto.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, perfectly.
Thank you all for being here, and I'm very glad, and it's a pleasure to be amongst you today. I remember the first time I was invited to interview, I wasn't available. So this time I said to myself, it's an engagement, I had to make it. So I had to leave a training session that was going on that was supposed to end at 6 p.m. But I'm very glad to be with you here. So quickly sharing coming to adverts. I just came back from two conferences on artificial intelligence. The first one was in Cluj-Napoca in Romania, and the second one was in Colmar. We just arrived this Sunday in France here. So this article, Sara, rings me a bell. And I thank you for that. I had a pleasure reading your paper. And yeah, let's start from the questions we have for you. So the first one, and yeah, before I ask my question, I just realized that Sara, we met before you came here, invited by Nicolas Moll and
Yes.
Guillaume. So yeah, that's perfect. Right. So the first question to you is. What prompted you to conduct or to start this color coding experiment?
Okay, thank you so much for the introduction. Just before answering the question, I just want to say that my two colleagues, co-writer, unfortunately couldn't be with us today. So I have the big task of representing them, but they're very sorry they can't be here. So yeah, thanks for your question. Actually, Elisabeth Paliot would be the perfect person to answer this question because she instigated this color coding experiment. So she actually started that quite a while ago, 4 years ago. And because she'd noticed a big discrepancy between how her students could speak and the writings that they were submitting. And she works for a university that is not, it's haute école, we say in French, which is not a university, but a university for applied sciences, I guess you would say in English. And most of her students, or some of her students, were actually working already alongside taking courses. So she noticed that they were using translators at the time, and she wanted to use this because obviously, being very pragmatic, she knew that when they were going to work, they were going to use those tools. So she wanted to map basically their use of the tools using this color coding. She shared that. We had big discussions because we also knew that our students were using these tools, and we wanted to embrace this, but also have them use the tools in a very conscious way. And really, that's the title of the article, really foster transparency. So not put our head in the sand and just pretend that everything was fine, but really understand what was going on. And so that's how it started, first at HEI with Elisabeth, and then at the Language Center of the University of Neuchâtel, we're starting doing that too. And yeah, that's how it started.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I can see that it's a collaborative initiative.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Now, thank you. The next question is, do you still use this system today in your classes?
Yes, I do. So every time students have to write a text at home, we really ask them to use the color coding, and they always, so it's not only the color coding, but then they also have to write a short paragraph, either in the first language or in the language of the course, where they explain about their writing process. The idea is really to make students aware. So the color coding and the writing of the short the note about their writing process is really to make students aware of their own use of tools, and also to work more on their writing process, if that makes sense.
Sure, it does. Thank you. If you allow, maybe I might steal some of these ideas to plug it in.
Yeah, of course.
As well. Yeah. Right. So you were talking about experiments about using color coding from the students from their written take home, what you call in the article, right? Take home assignment. Now, is there any few lessons that was learned that you might want to share with us?
So I think one very important lesson we learned was that sometimes we just don't give students enough credit. We have this idea, and I've talked to a lot of colleagues, and a lot of them tell me that they have this feeling that students are cheating, using AI all the time and all that. And what we see from our experiment, and we really ask them to color code everything, is that from time to time we get something which is blue. Blue is for ChatGPT and AI tools. So like everything is blue. Okay, that's cool. We didn't tell them not to use the tool, but most of the time it's just bits and pieces that are colored. It's not the whole text. And we also asked them so anonymously if they were transparent in the way that they reported their use of tools. And we could see that 3/4 of them were really transparent and really color-coded everything. And I have to say I'm very proud because in my classes, 100% said that they were transparent. So I was very happy. But yeah, so sometimes I think we sell our students a bit short. I mean, they don't actually want to cheat. They want to use the tools in a way that really helps them. And if we make them aware of that, I think it really works. So that was one very important thing that we learned, that students can be transparent if you allow them to be. I think the second very interesting thing was also with the use of tools, but our data is quite old in a way. It was taken in autumn winter 2023, so it's 2 years ago. But what we noticed was that for language writing in the second language purposes, students used translators more than AI. This might be changing. I actually tried to see, I had data from this year and it hasn't changed much. So I don't know, maybe Swiss are slow. Anyway, French think that we are, so maybe it's not a cliche, it's the truth. And we're slow at the uptake of taking all these AI tools. But yeah, a lot of students still use machine translation tools. So I think this is quite interesting because we tend to, now that AI is here, think that AI is the big problem and ChatGPT is the only tool out there, but it's not. And I think students have a more diverse use of tools than just AI and ChatGPT. And the last thing, it was really a question for us because many colleagues told us, I mean, I'm not even letting my students now write at home anymore. It's not worth it because I hate correcting ChatGPT, or I hate correcting DeepL. And this is something that we really talked to the student to. I mean, so the color coding also goes with AI literacy and MT literacy training in our classes, where we really explained to the students that we didn't want to correct ChatGPT, was not our job. It was okay if they used it to really help, but they needed to use the tools to really learn better. And it was okay, and they really needed to take responsibility for all the writing. That if you're A2 in German, you don't actually use conjunctive, okay? It's not possible, you can't do that. And I think it worked quite well. Something else that really emphasized in the AI training phase was to tell them that it was okay to make mistakes. They were not at A2, B1, even B2 level. I mean, we're not expecting something with no error whatsoever, because that's not possible. And if you look also at the CFR descriptors, I mean, you can see that they say that you can make errors, and that's fine. So I think that was also something quite important in our experiment, to make them aware that it's okay to make mistakes. We're not actually want them to do something error-free, and that even the mistakes are useful for us as teachers, because it can help us maybe, lead them a bit further in their learning.
Okay, thank you. Well, in the AI, there's a kind of law, there's AI Act, enact from the European Parliament, and they classify the use of artificial intelligence tools. And I think using ChatGPT, anything that is generative, has been classified as a transparency risk. And I can see that you really focus on transparency. Why is transparency so important for you? I mean, in your case?
It's a very good question. Transparency is linked to the AI literacy model that we've used. So we've used an AI literacy model for communicators designed by Carden and colleagues. It's in an article in 2023. And they describe AI literacy, generative AI literacy for communicators as depending on four main axes, if I can say that. The first one is called, I don't remember. Basically, I don't remember the name, sorry, they used, but it's the idea of knowing which tool works for what purpose, understanding how the tools work. The second one is called authenticity, and this is where this idea of you're allowed to make mistakes arise from. I mean, real communication is full of mistakes. We never speak perfectly, even in our own first language. So this also needs to be said. The third one is agency. So that's where we explain that they should not use language which is above their level. And if they use these tools, they're bound to use language which is above their level, because the tool speaks or write much better than them. And the last one is responsibility, and that's where the transparency is located, is that you need to take responsibility with what you're writing, and being transparent in the tools that you use to write, and being transparent about your writing process is really important.
Okay. Now, can you tell us if the color-coded texts were part of the course assessment, and how do you implement that concretely?
Yeah, it's a very good question. It wasn't for every course. So most of the courses, the texts they had to write at home were just not part of the assessment at all. They were just like just exercises. So for example, for Elisabeth, the students actually had a written exam, and they had no tools for that written exam. In the case of the Language Center, for some courses, we actually integrated the color-coded texts in the assessment. So it was part of the assessment, and I designed a special assessment rubric where 20% of the mark is actually about the awareness of the writing process and the sustainability in the use of tools. And that meant that if a student asked ChatGPT to write the whole text, they could actually get a pretty good mark, but never more than 4. 4 is the average in Switzerland out of 6. 6 would be the best mark. So I made it the way I created the rubric was that if you ask ChatGPT, that was totally unsustainable in my view, and I told them that, and it meant that they could never have more than 4. They would still pass. It's a passing grade, but it's not a really good passing grade.
Okay, thank you. Before Carmen, do we still have time to ask 1 or 2 questions, or it's 35? So maybe one last question.
No, I believe so. You have 3 more minutes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, Sara, this is going to be a more personal question. It's a very spontaneous one that just came to my mind. And also when I was reading your article, your paper, under the acknowledgements, you said you've also used part of AI tools, DeepL, and then to be transparent as much as possible. Now, the question that pops out in my mind is, do you think this kind of method can be applied to papers that we researchers published?
That's a good question. Maybe, probably not when it's published, like in the journal, because it's actually a bit difficult to read with all the colors. So I would not read research articles like that. But I think definitely adding the little note about the writing process should be compulsory for every journal. Because now we know that people use AI, and the fact that you acknowledge your use of AI and you describe how you use it in your writing process, I think is a way of showing that you're AI literate and that you use it in a sustainable way. And if you hide it, most of the time it's because you're a bit ashamed and probably you've used it a bit too much.
Yeah, right. Thank you very much. And for blowing my own horn, there's an article a paper that we just published with my colleagues here in Nancy. I just put in the chat, but so I guess might be interested for you. So
thank you.
Very much. Thank you all
Thank you for sharing.
Thanks.
Thank you very much to both of you. We've perfectly respected the time, even 1 minute left. So now I think we have plenty of time for questions if people want to ask questions. Carmen, do you want to add something?
No. It was very interesting. So thank you. Thank you, Sara. Thanks also for the link that you just put on the chat. Julia, maybe you want to say something about the whole before giving the floor to the participants.
I think one of the best things about this webinar has been the different sort of perspective that we've gotten. I think that's amazing. I mean, every time I was listening to, and I've read the papers, and every time I was listening to the authors, it was as if I was finding about new things that I have read about, but I hadn't really thought about. So thank you very much for that. And thank you also for giving us on the chat, in case somebody hasn't seen them, sending us additional references, because I think that's also very interesting. So I'll just give the floor to whoever has any questions. But again, I think the most important thing to take with me after the webinar is that we're all doing so many different things, and the possibility of putting all this together within a webinar within our journal is incredibly interesting for language teachers and researchers alike. So thank you very much for that.
Absolutely, yes. Marion, we can see your hand.
Yes, you can. I have a question, and that is for Mark.
We can't hear you well. Maybe can you try again?
Can you hear me now?
Do you have 2 devices on?
No, only one.
Okay, she's typing.
Okay. Although we could hear you, it was
Yes, it was
kind
just
of
a strange
detected.
mechanical sound.
Yes. Marion, do you want to try again if you...
Can you hear me now?
No. That's okay. Okay, typing. And in the meantime, maybe we have other questions. Stefan.
Hey, thank you very much. Sara, I was actually touched by what you were saying earlier, and you mentioned one very, very important point that I would like to point out again. So it's okay to make mistakes, because what happens now in those times when we're talking about intercultural communication, and maybe I'm using English as my main language, is that there's people in my team or in my colleagues or in the other students that are having better English. So I'm actually shy to use my English because I might do mistakes in this. Do you think that this is something that is kind of getting lost right now? Because before everybody was writing bad English all the time because there was not really a way to go around. You know what I mean? And now you're scared to be the only one that does not cheat in the way. You understand what I mean?
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. And I think you're totally right. We forget what is authentic communication. And I mean, for example, translating your texts. And you know, I mean, the next step in the technology is going to be we will all have these little things in our ears that will directly translate what people are saying. So there's no even any, I mean, something like that could actually be everyone speaks their own language and then AI sort of translates it. But is that authentic communication? I don't think it is. Personally, translation is not communication. And this is something very important also we need to be aware of. And yes, we are allowed to make mistakes, I think. And that is what is great about language learning, is that you get into these situations when you make a lot of mistakes and people still understand you and we still understand each other. So yeah, I think this is something very important to teach our students as well. And it also goes with these, maybe more generally, there's, what are they called? I've got them here, the inner developmental goals. Okay, I don't know if you know about them, but one of the inner developmental goals is humility, which I really like. And I think we need a bit of that, and we need to, learn again to be humble and to make mistakes.
Thank you, Stefan, for this question. And thank you, Sara, for highlighting these things. There is one thing that I very often use in class with my students. Oops, it means that they're talking. And this is especially for, you know, when young people who are very shy to make mistakes. In the meantime, Marion has added the question. My question is in relation to teachers in language centers who are not prepared. I'm not paid for this. This is not my job. To embrace scholarship, research, and become quite closed to dialogue, innovations. Any strategies to deal with this? I believe that Marion's questions wants to involve Mark and Irmgard. Correct? Okay.
Irmgard, shall I go first, Irmgard, and you can...
You go first, yeah.
Yes, one of the questions we had in the survey was about one of the barriers to conducting research with staff motivation for basically the reasons you've described. You can't persuade everybody to do it, but one important point, I guess, is that our role as language teachers is evolving. We're not just teaching language classes anymore. And every teacher should have a responsibility to maintain themselves up to date. And that's the approach I tended to try and use in my own centre in the past. And I think most of our colleagues do have that motivation. And then it comes down to asking them to do that at the same time as giving them a contract that allows them to do that. So the time for training and development and that sort of thing. And there's a blurring between training and development and keeping up with research. I don't know if you want to add any more, Irmgard.
I'm just thinking that maybe an approach of sort of guiding by example. If you have a group, or if you have a small group, like in management, you have a small group of those willing, wanting to go ahead, and those sort of interested in doing it, and then sort of focusing on that group. And then sometimes I've experienced it quite a lot in my professional career, that people, once there's even just a small group or an interesting project happening, and you spread the word, you talk about it in the corridors, in staff development workshops, maybe the odd talk, if that's within the situation, if your situation allows to do that. People sort of, maybe it takes some time, but some people sort of come along then, and they think, this is interesting, or just maybe they latch onto a certain aspect, for example. And I found this very often happens if it's some of the very practical benefits of research, because what we do, and this is what the article brought out, that it's so much is based on and centered around on what we actually do in language centers, the remit of language centers. So if they, I mean, teachers, and I'm a teacher myself, so we need to, see, okay, so what do I get out of this, and if they or a colleague, or just by chance, or if it's basically sort of, we keep repeating benefits of this and that, or the interesting article, or the interesting whatever finding or fantastic project that colleague so-and-so did, and have a look at that, and just look at the website, or the odd image on Instagram or something. This is fantastic. Some people come around, and I find that this sort of also creates maybe not 100% research-friendly culture, but sort of a culture where, at least it's seen as something beneficial, and something that, this is actually our professional basis in universities. And then I think it's easier, for example, if you have a sizable group of teachers, that there will always be some people who do other things. And but sort of slowly and gently encouraging, and focusing on those who want to do it, who can do it, who are good at what they do, and sort of and celebrating that sort of thing.
Thank you, Irmgard and Mark. Marion is adding, the problem is the 10% who are left behind. So, Marion, are you happy with the answers though? Okay, thank you to the three of you. Christina.
First thing, I would like to thank the writers and all the interviewers, because it was a great thing to hear, even if I have to admit that I haven't read the articles, but it was very motivating to do it, and I will make up for it, I swear. I'm very interested in the first interview, and it relates to what you were saying. I think that I must consider also, I'm a teacher, I'm a language teacher. I've been teaching for some more than 30 years now, and I've been working in different countries. I'm teaching Italian as a foreign language, and I've been teaching in Germany, I've been teaching in Italy. At the beginning, I was a freelancer, and I would have loved to do research. I would really have loved, and I wanted to, but I think you have to consider the position of the freelancer, particularly if they are not teacher of English, where it's very easy to find a job. You have to have plenty of teaching hours in order to make a living. I mean, I had up to 30 hours of teaching a week, and I had to move to different towns in order to be able to make a living. And it was really a kind where I was thinking, I love this job, but I mean, I could change in order to have an easier life. I insisted on it. I got a fixed position in the language teacher, in the language center where I'm teaching. There is, we are an administrative unit. So there is no consideration for research. And even if you find the time and try to do a project, the power that you have in order to implement the project, I'm not talking publication, but if you see that the project is working, there is no power behind it. But it is very easy to talk when you are in a fixed position, because still you can kind of, work in weekends or do your research or try to make your own project, and perhaps you manage to get them through. But what about my colleagues who had to work in different towns of Italy? They come from the south, they get to the north, they get back to the middle of the Italy, and then they get back and they travel for here and forth. I mean, why could they do research and still they are managing it? Then they present it, perhaps because we have the luck that we are able to do small conferences, but that's it. They cannot do anything more, and this is already great to what they are doing. So I think there is one aspect that perhaps those in a fixed position, or perhaps the directors of language centers should do, and it is exactly to consider what the position is and to improve upon the position language teachers all over Europe. Because as far as I've been in France recently, and what I've heard is not much better than the situation in Italy. So we are talking of precariousness all over the place. And even if you get some kind of contract, what you are paid is not what professors or other academics are being paid. So there is quite a gap between what you are doing as a language teacher, which is not recognized, and the issue behind it is simply one of power. Sorry for that. I was really emphatic, I guess.
No, it was you gave a very clear and complex, because it is complex, picture of what reality can be. I don't know if Hanna wants to add something to this topic, or we will ask Mark if they want to answer. Johanna?
Okay, so can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. I think that I do agree wholeheartedly with the person who was speaking before me, that we all need to make a living, yeah, and we are not maybe appreciated, but we are still part of the university. And I have to tell you that I'd like to go back to the topic of European alliances that Professor Jana Stuka, was talking about. I represent a small university in the north of Poland, and we are in one of the European alliances called EU for Dual. And we all want our students to, let's say, I assume that all of us want our students to be involved and to have a chance to communicate in real communicative situations with information gaps, let's say, and use projects. And within this EU for Dual Alliance, I'm responsible for, let's say, getting more teachers, language teachers involved. And as a kind of example, I decided with my friend from Finland to run a COIL project. It's collaborative online international learning. And we ran it in March, and we wrote an article about it. But it's going to be published in this European Journal of Dual Higher Education. But when I was listening to everything here, I thought that if CercleS could maybe have a kind of base of teachers who would be interested in cooperating cross-institutionally, cross-nationally, to, let's say, who would like to make connections and do it within our workload. I think that's important to what Christina was saying, that we might not have extra funds for that, but if we want our students to have a short COIL project, like 10 hours or maybe 5 hours, depends on the course, and offer them a virtual component during our lessons, maybe someone would be interested as well from you here. I hope I've made myself clear.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, for sure. And in the meantime, Marion, has added another comment on in the chat. It's a quote here in Helsinki. We're offered a small teaching reduction. You can drop 1 or 2 courses to support research projects. Of course, it doesn't cover all the time needed for research, but it's a gesture of support from the employer. Yeah, thanks for highlighting this, Marianne. There's also, I don't know if you want me to read the extra comment. Yeah. She's saying, I have in some institutions used the co-teaching where the hourly paid tutor is paid for the teaching and the research stems from a collaboration with a permanent member of staff who has time for a scholarship. This way they collaborate. Yes, there is an integration. Christina says, in Helsinki, you're lucky. Okay. Other comments, other questions? If not, I would actually, Julia and Anna, I would like to give the floor to San Lorix, if you don't mind, because I mean, it's the very first time for you as journal manager to join us. I don't know what kind of picture you got from this webinar this afternoon, San. So the voice goes to De Gruyter.
Couldn't find myself there for a second. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, this was fascinating to me. One, because my background is in linguistics, in multilingual repertoires, and in power relationships. So there were multiple very interesting talks about that. And I used to work at a language center for the University of VU in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. So this is all ringing a bell for me. It's been more than 10 years ago, but this was lovely to hear. Yeah, so for everybody who doesn't know me, most of you don't know me, I started last month at the Gruyter Brill, and I'm very excited to talk about opportunities to grow this fantastic journal further. I'm very excited about the opportunities and about getting to know all of you a bit better. Thank you for inviting me.
We're very glad to meet you. I was going to say in person, because now this sort of feels in person, but it's not in
Close
person.
enough. Close enough. Thank you.
Dominique, maybe you want to add something?
I'm not sure if I'm able to add something as well, but it's always a pleasure to work with all of you and to see what's coming out every issue-wise. And I'm just quite happy how this is all going from our side, and to work with you, Carmen and Anna, of course, especially. So it's always fun.
Thank you, Dominique.
Thank you, Dominique.
Any more comments or questions? If not, we will give the floor back to Julia, if you want rope up a little bit. And also Anne, of course, if...
No, I don't have anything to add, Carmen. Thank you. I think Julia should be the one to conclude the webinar.
Yes.
Again, I'm going to conclude by thanking the 4 of you, because right now the 4 of you, I don't know if it's the same thing in everybody else's screen, but in my screen, you're sort of the main windows. So thank you very much, Carmen and Anne, for all the work. Thank you to of course, the authors and the interviewers, because you are what made this webinar possible. And thank you, Dominique, for all the work you've done, and welcome, San, to language learning in higher education and to this group. So I think that is all. Thank you very much to everybody. And for the attendees, the attendants, sorry, thank you for coming, and I hope you found it as interesting as I did.
Thank you, Julia. In the meantime, there was a question. Yes, the recording will be made available. So we will send information. Actually, the General Secretariat will send information about it. And Well, Christina said, I didn't have the chance to read the articles, but now I feel inspired and I will do it. So don't forget that online you can find this 15.1 issue, and obviously you can refer to all the others, to all the other issues where there are so many articles. Once again, I want to point out coming from not only CercleS community, but so many other countries, areas in the world. And at times, you know, we have this impression, we have this, when we get articles from some time ago when it was a very hard time for them from Afghanistan, and these days from Iran. So you can imagine the kind of emotions that we have when we receive, and from Palestine, sometimes we say, it's incredible. It's incredible because we understand that despite the unpleasant things that are happening, language professionals want to keep on working and studying, carrying out research, and this is incredible. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you, everybody.
Everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Ciao.
Bye.
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 Thank you.